Welcome to The Beautiful Side of Grief, your go-to podcast if you're wanting to hear from people who have moved through heart-wrenching loss or those who are at the coalface supporting the process. It's diverse, heartwarming, though most of all it is positive and filled with go-tos that you can use yourself. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and I'm a health professional turned energy healing practitioner after I lost my only child and daughter, Tal, in a car accident in 2017. I want to use my own unique experience with loss to help you navigate your journey. You will hear from grief coaches, mediums, authors, first-hand loss accounts, plus many, many more. I'll put the links to any free resources in the episode notes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can keep informed of each weekly episode. So now grab a pen and paper if you want to jot things down. Sit back and relax as we navigate the beautiful sides of grief. I'm excited to share with you my guest today. Her name is Tasha Wilson, or Tasha W as she prefers to go by. Grief has taught Tasha to maximize every moment in her life and to live with intention and purpose after she lost her dad in a work accident when she was just 16. She truly is inspiring, and in this short life she has lived, she truly has done some awesome stuff. She has found strength in community and set up the Royalty Refined movement, which is a community set up to empower millennial women to unlock the treasure within by redefining their identity. And they do this by sharing stories and applying strategies to mend the broken pieces of their past. She is an entrepreneur, a transformational speaker, and speaks across multiple platforms to raise awareness of the effects of sexual violence. Plus, Tasha has also authored several books, not one, but several books. And her latest is Recognize Your Opponent. Your greatest enemy is your inner me. Yeah, don't we know that? This book has the intention of helping others overcome a defeated mindset. So, with everything she does, Tasha brings an air of hope and beauty, and we're going to have a chat about the significance of community and healing and how to move from tragedy to living your life with intention and purpose. And so wonderful to have you once again joining in on my podcast. A pleasure always to have you with me. And so now, why don't you just relax and let's get into it. Let's hear from Tasha. It's a pleasure to have you on the beautiful side of grief today, Tasha. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so just glad and excited to be here.
Good. Well, we've got a great session ahead where we're going to explore loads of things. I'm going to start off by you sharing with us what your grief experience was, because it started when you lost your dad at the age of 16, I believe. So I would love for you to walk us through what that was like for you at the time, being a teenager and losing such an important figure in your life.
Yeah. So, of course, at the age of 16, you're still trying to figure out life. You're trying to figure out who you are. It's that awkward transitional stage where you're like, I'm too old to do certain things, but then I'm too young to do certain things. And so I was in my junior year at high school, and my father, I was truly a daddy's girl. And so, a lot of people are like, wherever my dad was, I was right there. And so he was very active in my life and in my brother's life. Everything that we did, things that we were passionate about, he was always there, cheering us on. And he was really engaged with our friends too in the community. Like, he always made sure that everyone got home safely. That was just who he was. He just had a really big heart. And so I will never forget it. It was March 14th, 2001. And my dad was late picking me up from cheerleading practice. And I'm just like, why is my dad not here? Like, he's never late. He's very punctual. Like, why is he not here? And then I was getting mad because I called his cell phone and there was no answer. And I'm like, he doesn't ignore me. Like, what's going on? And so I found out that he actually had passed away from a work-related incident. And the only way that they could identify him was his uniform, because it had his name on there. So it was very devastating for me because I felt like I didn't have that closure to say goodbye in the way that would have made sense for me, because the last time I saw him was the night before, because whenever he left to go to work, I was still asleep. I didn't have to wake up and go to school until like a couple hours later. And so that happening, and then the whirlwind of emotions of me being mad that he didn't respond to me because I didn't know what was happening, brought another ball of emotions at that time as well. And so growing up in a small community, our family, everyone just knew. And it was just kind of like, once that became public news, we kind of became in the spotlight, like my mom, my brother, and I. And so everyone's just kind of watching our every move after that. So things weren't as private anymore. And so we tried to figure out, how can we navigate a space where we could, readjust to life after his death without feeling like we were under a microscope.
Wow. I mean, that in itself is difficult to navigate, but let alone being daddy's girl and then suddenly having this huge, great big hole. And it must have felt like that, just this big hole where your dad was supposed to be in your life. And 16, yeah, really, really pivotal age, where you can go one way or the other because you're still trying to work out who you are, what you are. Can you actually remember back to the aspects of your grief journey that were the toughest for you to face or to get your head around?
Yeah, it was really hard for me to open up because I just felt like I was under a constant watchful eye. And it was just like, when I returned to school, people were just kind of like, that's the girl, that's the one whose father, passed away. And so I felt like I didn't have any privacy. So I just kind of shut my emotions down. I didn't want anyone to see me like bust out in tears, publicly become angry. I just didn't want that to add to the conversations that people were already having. And being in high school, some people are so cool that they were sharing details about his accident that my mom didn't even want me to know. So I found out about other things because she just wanted me to remember him the way that I knew him and not how he was discovered. And so with that, it was really tough. It was a tough pill to swallow. And so the school counselor had kind of assimilated me into a grief group that they had at the high school, which was already scary because I already didn't want to open up to anyone. And so kind of being involuntarily placed into this group just made me shut down even more. I understand the intentions behind it because they felt like it would be a good service, but where I was emotionally, I just wasn't ready. And so the counselor that was there gave me a notebook and she gave me a pen and she said, well, if you don't want to talk to any of us, at least write your thoughts down here. And so that's how I started opening up more on how I actually felt by writing down my thoughts on paper. But even then, it still was tough. Like I didn't really fully grieve until I left to go to college, honestly.
Wow. Was it like that within your family as well? Like, could you openly just talk about your dad with your mum and your brother? Was that something that you shared, or were you all just trying to just get through it, just get through the public scrutiny, just get through your days?
We were all trying to get through the public scrutiny. Like, my brother looks exactly like our dad, like identical. And so that was hard for him. When everyone is just looking at him, it's almost like as if they saw a ghost, like, oh my gosh, you look just like your dad. And then him hearing that while still trying to process that our dad is not coming back. My mom, that was her high school sweetheart. They were married, entering upon 21 years of marriage. So for her, it was just difficult. Like every day she was just crying and she just didn't know what to do. And so my brother and I, we kind of felt helpless a little bit because we're still trying to figure out how we should cope, but yet trying to be strong for her. And so it was really hard. It was just almost like a nightmare, as if, did this really happen? Is he just going to prank us and walk through the door? It was really hard. And then because we lived so close to where he worked, we had to go another route, to go to stores because we just couldn't deal with riding past that place for a while.
Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. Yeah, and what is it? Like, did you feel like you had a good support network wrapped around your family at the time? Did you feel that it was more focused on your mum and was left to her to decide what was appropriate for you and your brother around what you guys needed for grief support? How did that work? Because, I'm always interested in how people come together to support others in those situations.
Yeah, so for me, it was really a blur. I feel like because, being a minor at the time, there was some attention, but then it was more so, what are we going to do now afterwards? So a lot of it was really, on my mom, like, okay, making sure she's okay because she was having like night tremors and things like that. So the family would come around the clock just to try to maintain the household to make sure that me and my brother like ate and had everything that we needed. My brother felt like he had to, step up and take ownership as being man of the house. So then he really didn't process his emotions right away. He just kind of put it into his work and, just trying to be strong for my mom and I. And then for me, I was just so confused about everything, honestly, because like I had a few friends, that would call and check on me, but it was still awkward because everyone was at our house like around the clock. Like,
Yeah.
my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents, just making sure that we're okay. But it was, for me, I just felt like it was too much because it was overwhelming. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I felt that also, like I just wanted space from people. I mean, I know it was well intentioned, that everybody was there, but really I felt happiest when
Yeah.
when everybody eased off a bit. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but it is, like too much attention. And it's hard to be yourself in that as well, like you were saying. And especially if you tend to be a bit of an introvert, like you shared with
Yeah.
me earlier. Yeah, tough times for you, and all a bit of a blur, like you say. You don't know which way's up, and it's your life has changed, and it will never be the same again.
Yeah.
So yeah. What about community is so important when you face any sort of life crisis, do you think?
I think community is so important because it allows you to feel safe, knowing that you're not in it by yourself. I think just knowing that if you can see someone else's strength, it kind of rubs off on you a little bit. Knowing
Yeah.
that someone has dealt with trauma like you did, no matter what capacity. And so being able to see how they're learning how to live again without their loved one physically being present, it kind of gives you the optimism that you need. Like, okay, maybe I can get through this, or maybe I can deal with this. Maybe it's not as unbearable as I thought it would be. And so I just feel like community is just really there. The community is like a pillar to me, like being able to have someone that you can truly lean on and someone who doesn't make it awkward to talk to you about what you're dealing with, but kind of normalizing the conversation. Like, it's okay if today you're having a bad day, or it's okay if you're having a good day, but not making me feel bad about the pendulum of emotions that I may go through in any given day.
Did you think it was a community when you went away to college, or that was your community that you really identified with, rather than the one back home, which was like being under a microscope?
Yes, because being at college, no one really knew my backstory. They just knew me, based upon my name. And that was refreshing for me because it gave me a sense of having my power back, only sharing what I wanted to share and not feeling like I was obligated to share because,
Yes.
at home it's kind of like a label that they give you because they were given a glimpse or a preview of what happened. And so being at college, it's like, I don't have to share anything unless, say they bring up a moment or someone's talking about their parents. And then if they only hear me mention my mom and not my dad, then, being inquisitive, then I can kind of share only what I want versus them already having an idea of how I'm going to be because of a loss. And for me, a great outlet was Kids Chance of Maryland, which also help like support me financially for college because I thought that college was off the table, after my dad
Wow.
passed. So
Yep.
yeah, and that just was an extensive community outside of who I already met in college. So it was great.
Oh, that was special. What a great opportunity. And you are such an incredibly upbeat, passionate advocate for millennial women in a number of really important areas. What was it within you, do you think, that enabled you to choose the path of empowerment rather than victim, as you could so easily have gone down that other path?
Yeah, I would say the life that my father lived. He's always been about others before self, and he always lived life to the fullest. So even though he passed away when I was 16, I felt like he fulfilled his purpose before he left because he really just wanted people to feel good about themselves and for people to feel like they were significant in the world. And he accomplished that. Like so many stories were shared about my father, like things I didn't even know about. And, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Like my dad was really great. And so for me, I know a lot of my temperament and personality is a lot like his. And so I wanted to be able to provide an opportunity for people who felt alone. I didn't want people to feel as if they didn't have a healthy outlet. And so that's where that source of empowerment came from. Like, how can I let others know that they're not by themselves and that it's okay to acknowledge and own how they feel and then express that?
Yeah, he was a beautiful angel on earth as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's in reflection that you actually realize, like I kind of felt like the same thing about my girl is like I felt like she'd been here before, she'd done that, and she really was an angel. She just walked to her own beat. She was strong, she was caring, she was supportive. Oh, yeah. So definitely
Yeah.
beautiful people out there. Yes. You now live your life with intention and purpose. What do you consider the important traits to cultivate within to allow you to feel empowered to be able to do that? As I know, like I really am an empathic introvert. So for me to put myself out and my voice out there is a huge deal. And I've had
Yeah.
to do lots of work within to reach that place where, I saw my goals rather than the things that could prevent me from achieving.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And so it's so funny. But for me, it was really enabling that confidence that I already had inside. Like, this happened to you for a reason. You have a story to share that others need to hear. And that's all I thought about. Like, if I could impact one person in a positive way, then I've done my job. And so for me, it was really thinking about who could I help today? Who could I brighten? Like, whose day could I brighten? And so for me, it was just really like looking at who I am. Like, I've always been a compassionate person. I've always been a selfless person. I've always been one to like genuinely love other people. And so with me sharing my story, and no matter what capacity, I am exuding all of that of who I am inside for the world to see. And so for me, it's like if I hide this or I keep this to myself, I'm not really doing any justice of reflecting on the life that my father lived and how it has personally impacted me to be this courageous woman, to be a woman who's full of strength and integrity. And so it was like, that's all he ever wanted for me. He always wanted me to follow the path that felt good for me. And I think with him, in his passing, he taught me that lesson. Like, it's okay to be you and not trying to fit in with everyone else.
You definitely are your daddy's girl, and I know that he would be looking down on you feeling extremely proud. I
Yeah.
could just see that big smile across his face going, there goes my baby girl.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so, so beautiful. Talk to me about not wanting counseling for an event that happened to you on campus because you thought you would be judged and blamed for what happened. I feel this is important for our listeners to hear, as that may be something that they're facing through their own loss right here and now, the fear of being judged or blamed. And what changed your mind about that? And was it helpful?
Yeah, so a year and a half after my father passed, I was sexually assaulted on campus. And so I felt like with me being so much of a giver or being a loving person that I just kind of felt like everyone viewed others the same way I did, with respect. And so when that didn't happen, I felt like, what signals did I give for this person to feel like they could do this to me, take advantage of me, And so I had so many questions in my mind that I started questioning who I was. And I'm just like, do I need to become this mean and cold person in order for people to not want to be around me? Like, what is going on? And so I was hesitant about going to counseling right away because sexual assault, sexual violence was just not a topic that, my college campus wanted to talk about. I mean, it was still
Yeah.
sort of taboo. And then the environment just wasn't welcoming enough in the counseling center for me to feel open. And so that didn't help
I
because it
feel
was
safe.
perpetuated. Yeah, it was like the perpetuated trauma from before, when I was in the grief group. And
Yeah.
I'm like, am I going to put myself through that same cycle again where I'm now at this time wanting to be open? And then if I don't get the response that I need in that moment, am I going to shut down again? And so that was my hesitation. And at the time of the sexual assault, the guy also stalked me and had his friends too. And so when I did report that to the campus police, the response was just really dismissive. And so that just kind of made me not even want to continue with reporting, to the counseling center. And so if it really wasn't for the encouragement of my best friend, I would not have made my way to the counseling center. She was that anchor that I needed and said, I'll go with you and, I'll protect you. Like if how they're treating you makes you feel triggered, I will speak up. I will say something. So having someone with me made me feel more comfortable and safe versus me trying to face it alone.
That is such a good point to raise, because I think when you're feeling shattered, when you're feeling just like you can't even get yourself out of bed, it's really, really good to have somebody by your side who can be your voice for you, who can keep you
Yeah.
safe, who can be your advocate, because you really need to find that place that you can feel safe and that you can trust the people within, because like you say, otherwise it's just trauma on top of trauma.
Yeah.
It's just this horrible cycle. And I am so sorry you had to go through that after you'd already lost your dad. That must have just, but you must have been really questioning life at that stage.
Yeah.
And that, but
Absolutely.
yeah, but sometimes I feel like out of the worst can come the absolute best. And I
Yeah.
think when you have to face such tragedy, you can actually dig deep and ask those questions of yourself and define who you really are,
Hmm.
with everything that's happened. Do you think you'd be the person you are today if you hadn't suffered the loss of your dad at such a pivotal time?
Honestly, no. I think for me, I still would have been walking around in life not really having a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, not really trying to put myself out there and, just keep things safe, not stepping out of my comfort zone. And so I honestly believe that in his death, it was an awakening for me because I really started learning more about the things that I'm passionate about, which was advocacy, speaking up for other people. And I think that if that situation did not happen and I didn't experience his loss at that age, I probably would not have been able to find the strength that I already had within. I would have just continued to, go to my dad for everything,
Yeah.
and having him be that person to take care of me through life. And I would not have become, so driven and, really independent or really learning how to critically think for myself. And so for me, it was understanding that the pain that I suffered and the pain that I endured really led me to my purpose, which was to be an ally and advocate for other people, to foster authenticity in the lives of others because I'm just being my transparent and vulnerable self, allowing other women to feel their emotions, the raw and uncut feelings of everything that they've experienced and not minimize it, for the sake of others' opinions, and just really understanding that they can overcome whatever they're dealing with, even if it feels like you can't in that moment. And, using my story and sharing with them, like, if I can get out of a deep, dark place, then I know you can too. If you have the right people that support you, that are not judging you, and who really are there to embrace everything that encompasses who you are, then you'll be okay.
And I think you hit on something very key there where you're talking about, using your story. And if
Yeah.
you didn't have that story, you wouldn't have that basis. And so, I often feel that sometimes we have to go through some pretty tough things in life to give us the empathy, the understanding, the awareness of all these things, in order to help others. Because if you don't understand, you don't connect.
Exactly.
And that's a true part of advocacy work, isn't it? It's being able to connect. It's not necessarily knowing their story and how that feels for them, but it's knowing that you're on a similar journey or have been on a similar journey, so you can start to begin to imagine. And that's what I find with the grief process as well, is that it's such an individual thing that no two journeys are the same for anybody. So yeah. All righty. Well, you have just shared some beautiful information, and I know from reading your website and various bits and pieces of what you do, you are a beautiful shining light for so many. So keep up that amazing journey. I want to finish up with you telling me what is the best thing that has happened to you today or this week.
Ooh, okay. So the best thing I'll do today, the best thing that happened today. So my best friend and I, every week, we choose a day. We call ourselves Thelma and Louise. And so we're like, okay, Thelma and Louise Day. And she's also experienced the loss of a parent. So that's another way that we connect as well. Like, it was interesting because even though I was much younger, but I knew how to be there for her once she had lost her mom. And so it was just like, okay, now I understand. It's full circle as to why I had experienced that as well, to be there for her. And so we have our Thelma and Louise Day. And today we actually went to go get ice cream from Cold Stone Creamery, which is one of our favorite places. And today was just so beautiful outside. So we sat with our ice cream and we just kind of sat like in the park and just enjoyed like the natural scenery. And sometimes that's all we need. We just need to separate from the busyness and just enjoy the moment. So
perfect. Yeah, that sounds a real treat. Yeah, and it's just enjoying the simple things, the sunshine, the beautiful day, being outside and having ice cream. Yum. Okay. When your day turns to custard, when nothing is going right, what is it that you do to help you get through that, to shift the way you're thinking?
Yeah, my faith absolutely is the main thing that really recenters me. I'll pray, I'll read a devotional, I'll write in my journal because my journal has been my saving grace. And I just really sit there and process my thoughts. I don't try to move too quickly with how I'm feeling because that was something that I used to do. I used to just, not acknowledge how I felt in that moment and just try to pick myself up and say, okay, don't worry about it. It's okay. But I actually normalize how I'm feeling. So if I'm not having a good day and it's just a bad moment, I acknowledge it. I own it. And then I let myself sit in it for a little bit. Yeah. But then I go to those places, with prayer, with my devotions, affirmative words, to try to make me feel better. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, I'll just do some self-care. And that could, drink hot tea,
Yep.
light my favorite scented candle, and then sometimes watch like a feel good movie. So I have like two that are my ultimate feel good movies
Oh, you
that
have to
I
share.
watch. Yes. So one of them is Sister Act 2 because I love like the music, the animation, the dancing, and all of that. And so every time I watch it, it's like I watched it for the first time. And
Yeah.
it really allows me to like escape and really just see myself there with the music and everything like that. And then the other one is Just Right with Queen Latifah and Common. That's another feel good movie because I just love unconventional love stories. And so that just puts me in a happy place because I love to see others happy. So
Thank you for sharing that. That is awesome. Now, something I forgot to ask you earlier, so I'm just going to take it on here. You have a special way of celebrating anniversary. Love for you to share with us what you do.
yes. So Kids Chance of Maryland, which was the place, the scholarship that I was telling you about briefly. So each year they have like a recognition banquet and they also have a conference. And so what I've done is that I get to share my story of, experiencing the loss of my dad, but then also celebrating the fact that I wouldn't have met any of them and I wouldn't have been able to, receive an extended family, if you will, to really say, hey, I know how you're feeling. I know what you're going through and I'm here with you. And so being able to not feel like an outlier in that setting always feels really good. And so to know that they honor his name every year, his memory is just amazing. And then outside of that, his birthday, it's just a way that we just share, like my mom, my brother, and I just share memories that we've had with him and, what he would be like now, because my brother is like a grandfather now. So we're like, can you imagine?
Oh,
Yeah, like all of that, and so we talk about those things and, different milestones that have happened in our lives that we know that he's with us, during those moments. And so we celebrate him that way. For Christmas, we had did something special for where got pictures taken like in his memory. And so that way she can just always have a keepsake nearby. And so we just always make sure that even though he's not physically here, we still include him with everything and we still honor his legacy through those important dates.
that's beautiful. And your mom and your brother are doing well?
Yeah, yeah. We're so much more like in a better space, like emotionally. If anything, it really has taught us to strengthen our connection with one another. And so we don't go a day without talking to each other.
Oh,
We always have to make sure that we know what's going on. And so it just really has brought us closer together.
oh, that's so good to hear. What are your three takeaways that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, the first thing is that grief is definitely a personal journey. Grief is not a one moment in time. It's something that's continual, your process, and it's individualized. So always remember that how you grieve, it's going to look different than how someone else grieves. And no one has the opportunity to tell you how to grieve because it's your process, it's personal. Also know that you're not in this by yourself. You're not alone. Even if you feel isolated and feel like no one cares or no one's listening, there are people out there who really want to love you and support you and embrace you. So, don't get shut off and don't get closed down, but just be open to those who genuinely want to be there. And then know that there is a beautiful side and a beautiful story to this. There's a reason why you're dealing with this loss because it's for you to help other people. And just take one day at a time, one day at a time.
Oh, such an absolute pleasure having you as my guest today, Tasha. You've just shared some seriously good information that I'm sure will just help so many people who get to listen to this. And I thank you for that because I understand about making yourself vulnerable and sharing your stories and I'm deeply, deeply appreciative. Yeah, good information. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me and just being able to share my story in this capacity. Because if I can help someone else out, I definitely will. Grief, is definitely a complex journey. But I think we're all fastening our seatbelts and we're enduring the ride.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're already helping more people than you actually realize, and every single day, just by being the beautiful person you are. So carry on with the fantastic work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode today, feel free to share it with others. Hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of each weekly episode. Also, rate and review, especially if there is more you want to know that perhaps we didn't have time to touch on today. And if you are after resources to help you out on this journey, head to healingtobeYou.com and check those out there. So until next time, be kind to you, and thank you for joining us on the beautiful side of grief.